Craig Pickering, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I was going to say in Ireland, but in the evening over in Australia. Um, Really interested to dive deep into not just your professional career, but your role here today as you stand as a performance sustainability manager in Athletics Australia. For those who don't know who you are, where you've come from, and where you are now, maybe give us a bit of a background to how you got here.
Yeah, I guess like as a rapid overview. A long time ago now, I used to be a professional athlete. So I was a 100-meter runner. I went to four World Championships and Olympic Games in the 100 for two of those, and then the 4x1 relay for a couple more. After that, I did bobsleigh for a couple of years. Then I worked for a sports technology startup, and then I moved to Australia. And then since 2019, I've been working for Australian Athletics.
That was very quick. You have a lot more in the tank than that. I'm gonna pull on some of that, Craig, because I know for a long time you were not just an athlete, but you were a fairly high level 100-meter sprinter at one point. And obviously now, as you said, you transitioned into sports science. I'm interested to know, just as an athlete, did you always see yourself going into something like high performance related, or is that something that came later as retirement began to become a bit more of a, I suppose, a thought process? A career has to be kind of made here, or a transition out needs to be made. Is that something you always eyed up?
I reckon, like most athletes, you probably because you're in sport all the time, you start to think about, okay, well, most of my coaches are former athletes. That's probably the pathway I'll go down. Um, but I was always interested in sports science. So yeah, I remember even when I was sort of 14 or 15, I started GCSEs and I was studying PE. When I got the PE textbook, I went home and I read it all in a weekend. I was like fascinated with just learning about the human body. Then I was fascinated about thinking, I'm like 1 year into sprinting, but how can I use this information to improve my performance? Like I was obsessed with that sort of thing. And then, yeah, so in A levels, similar sort of thing, just really interested in like the sports science stuff. How can I harness that information to get an improvement? So studied sports science at university, and like I really enjoyed most of it. But at the same time as when my athletics career was taking off, so I was kind of like, it's getting in the way of stuff that I'd want to do as well. So once I sort of graduated from that, I didn't really take on any further study for a period of time. Looking back, I wish I had done, but I was like 21. So I was like, oh, I'll have a career which lasts another 15 years or so, plenty of time to think about what retirement looks like. And then life comes at you very fast and you have to make some decisions. Yeah, I probably thought initially I thought I'd go into coaching. The more time I sort of spent in sport, the more I realized I actually enjoyed more of the performance support stuff like the physio, S&C, psych, biomechanics, physiology, those things. And then yeah, just sort of graduate into that kind of field a bit more.
Mm. In relation to like studying a bit sooner, you'd mentioned there that you wish you maybe took on further study as you were going through your athletic career. Is there any particular reason why you think that's important, or why you should have done that earlier?
It's just it's a really good habit to be in, and if you're a professional athlete, it's good not to spend all of your day thinking about sport. Like so, studying breaks that up quite nicely. The downside for me is I'm a really obsessive personality. When I was a professional athlete, I just wanted to find out more and more stuff about how I could be better. Actually studying sports science in that regard was probably a negative because it made me question loads of stuff I was doing and be like, oh, should I do this instead? Like, had I been studying something a bit different, it probably would have given me an escape. But like, then it ended up that everything that I was doing was related to sport. Probably like for the time I was at, it might not have been a bad decision to not go into it, but certainly looking back, I wish I'd have spent more time doing that, and then probably more time getting a bit of practical experience as well. Because when I retired, I think I was 26 or 27, and try and enter the workforce, but you're entering the workforce along with people who have had 5 or 6 years of working experience, so they're always going to sort of like be ahead of you on the job front, and you're playing catch up for a period of time. So alongside study, I probably would have, looking back, I should have done some part-time work as well.
Mm, mm. That's something that's actually coming into, I think, sports organizations or national governing bodies now, is that kind of dual careers piece, life skills, just enhancing people's ability to make smoother transitions out and kind of update your identity as you're going through your athletic journey. And there really is something powerful to that. And I've kind of realized that because I'm not that good of an athlete, I've had to work alongside my athletic journey for quite a while. But what I realized I'm kind of like you. I'm very obsessive. So having that outlet was really important for me to not go away from workouts and obsess over what I didn't do well today and all the rest of it. So it's good to see that. I think, I know Sport Ireland, for example, are making a lot of headway in that area, which is great. You mentioned you'd retired at 26, 27, but you went into bobsleigh almost immediately after, isn't that right?
Yeah, so what happened was I'd injured my back quite badly in 2007 when I was 20. So I was sort of managed to rehab from that pretty well. Still had 2008 and 2009 as really strong years in athletics. 2010, I had a really poor year. I had some sort of medical condition which wasn't well understood. I was probably in an overtraining state, which is probably what was causing that. Then I kind of bounced back well enough in 2011, but then after 2011, I had a really serious back injury, which required me to have surgery. So I missed the whole of 2012. So obviously the London Olympics. I knew 6 months before the Olympics that I wasn't going to make it because of the injury. But it was obviously you spent 7 years preparing for that. To miss that was quite hard. And then off the back of that, because I'd missed the year, I was removed from lottery funding, which is the way that sport in the UK sort of gives you some money to be able to do things and access facilities. So because I was taken off that, I was like, well, why don't I just try and do something else? And bobsleigh were actively looking for fast people to come and do their sport. So they put me on a talent transfer program, which sort of gave me facility access again. And I did that for a year and a half, which it was like loads of fun. It was really hard and really different. And I started off obviously as a complete novice and had to sort of try and figure out what I was doing and figure out what to do to be successful. But after that kind of 18-month period, I qualified for the team I was in qualified for the Olympics, and I was picked for the Olympics in the two and the four-man bobsleigh, which sounds like a happy ending. I mean, that's a good achievement. But then I suffered a career-ending injury in between getting selected for the Winter Olympics and competing for the Winter Olympics. So I was actually in Austria at the last training camp. So the injury was a back injury again. I remember it happening. I remember getting an MRI scan, and I remember thinking like this. I can see on the scan that doesn't look good. So then I was flown home by the British Olympic Association to one of their rehab centres, and then I, rem- I remember the doctor came. He'd driven 3 hours to come and see me, and as he came into the room, I could see he was really nervous. I was I know what he's going to tell me. I've seen the scan. I can see exactly where this is going. I was like, no, it's fine. Like I know what's happening. So yeah, he broke the news to me, and then just off the back of that, I was like, well, the suggestion from him was that it's probably a good idea to retire now just to protect my long-term health. There's similar advice from two or three other physios and doctors as well. So off the back of that, I retired. That was in 2014. Didn't really have much to do and sort of just bounced around things, trying out a few things, and then yeah, after about 7 or 8 months, I started working at that sports technology company, and things took off from there really.
Mm. And then I believe you moved to Australia quite shortly after and started a doctorate as well, and you kind of got your research interests and expertise flowing there. So, for the audience who don't know, you've kind of a good background, from what I understand, in caffeine supplementation and its effects on performance, as well as genetic profiling, as well, isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right. So the sports technology company I was working for was a genetic testing company. So they were obviously interested in doing a bit of research around what they could do, and then using that to, I guess, guide product design, but also how the product might be used and that type of thing. So they were interested in it from that perspective. I was really interested in doing further studies, and then I kind of focused primarily on the genetic aspect of it, but I've got a side interest in caffeine because I was just obsessed with it as a supplement or an ergogenic aid when I was competing. I was just noticed loads of things happening as I was taking it, which was sort of a bit unusual compared to other people. So yeah, I've long had an interest in caffeine. So I kind of most of my papers are probably split equally between caffeine and genetics. I don't think I've written a genetic paper for a long period of time, but I still hold a bit of an interest in the caffeine side.
And so you initially then started out in Athletics Australia quite close to COVID. Is that right? 2019-ish? Is that right?
Yeah, so the sports technology company I worked for was based in the UK. So I worked for them for a year when I lived in the UK, and then I moved to Australia because my wife, well, my now wife, got a job over here. So I kept that job going whilst I was over here for 3 or 4 years, and then Christian Malcolm, who people might remember as a 200-meter runner, well, a sprinter from Great Britain, he had a job at Australian Athletics, And when he got that job, he contacted me to sort of just see if there was any interest from me of working for Australian Athletics. So yeah, it was the start of 2019 where I got the role as pathways manager. So I was in charge of all I was managing all the youth development programs, World Under 20s, that sort of thing. And then a couple of years later, early 2020, well, just after the 2021 Olympics, I moved into a slightly different role, which is the role I'm in now, which is Director of Performance Sustainability. So that role gives me, well, I manage and lead a team which is responsible for athlete pathways, performance support, data science, and research and innovation as well. So a pretty interesting role.
Yeah, geez, there's loads in that, and we'll definitely go into it a little bit more. But I want to ask you just kind of going into the, I suppose, last year or two in Australian athletics, particularly the sprints, and you're quite involved with that. That is, you know, it's clearly, particularly on the men's side, on the rise. And I'm just interested from your perspective, given that you've actually been there quite a while now, since 2019. Like, what do you think is is happening? Obviously, there's multiple factors, both at an individual and probably an organizational level as well. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it because it certainly is becoming very well known, even across the world. Like the results that likes of Gaukout and Lockie Kennedy have had, on the global scene this year.
Yeah, so like the more time I spend in elite sport, the more I think there's a really strong relationship between how well you resource something and the results that you get. So like if you throw money at a problem, you'll probably see an improvement slightly. Like it's not an opportunity to write a blank check for things. The
Hmm.
the competitive edge you get in elite sport is doing a bit more for slightly less money than competitors do, so you can put money into other places. But from a relay standpoint, when I'd started, I had an interest in the relays and I was helping the relay coach at the time, just sort of like at camps and just trying to be his assistant coach. And then we often have to write like strategic documents or apply for funding for things. And relays was always kind of front of mind for me as something that we could be really good at if we were really organized around it. So obviously, my time in the British setup, we were winning medals, relay medals quite frequently without really having any sub 10 sprinters when I was around. And the way we could do that was we just got very good at changeovers and maximize that aspect of it. And so I kind of thought the same for Australia. Like Australia's got a lot of 10-1, 10, or 2 or 3 years ago, had a lot of 10-1, 10-2 runners. So the opportunity to be good at relays was there if we wanted to take it, but we just needed to be a bit more structure and discipline into how we did that. So that was my thought process. And then a couple of years ago, the relay program went through a bit of a refresh, and I got the opportunity to become the men's 4x1 coach. And then, yeah, since then we've just been really structuring how we have camps, structuring how we set them up. We're able to now just give lots of resources to athletes, so we can support up to 9 athletes at a very high level of support, which it puts money in their pocket, but also gives them loads of facility access, access to sports science, sports medicine, supports their coaches as well. So as you're doing that, that just helps create, I guess, a feeling of collaboration, and that collaboration helps athletes just get better because they can access all those things. And then another thing the relay team does really well is it sort of drives competition. Like athletes want to be in the relay team. And so you find the people that are ranked fifth or sixth are trying everything they can to get in there. So they're naturally raising their standards. And then the younger athletes that are coming through, they see those athletes going to world championships or Olympic games, having some level of success. They want to be on there as well. So then you just get like relay camps that are really, really competitive. And it just drives the standard up and up and up. And I think that's probably one of the main drivers as to why we're having successful sprints now. It's not the only driver. Like we've got really talented athletes as well, really good coaches, but it definitely will be playing a role.
Mm. And with those relay camps, like how often are you doing them? Because I think one of the things that people often believe to be a challenge about assembling good relay teams is that you've got all these great individuals who have their own individual aspirations, but actually getting them together often enough to get those kind of changeovers down to a high level is really key. So like how are you setting that up throughout the year?
Yes. So like I'm 3 years and I'm coming to my fourth year now. And yeah, you think relay coaching is coaching relays, but relay coaching is actually driving cultural change in those athletes so they want to come to learn how to do relays and training sessions. Like it's actually quite difficult. So the first year was like, here's what we're going to do. Let's try and convince you to come along and do this relay training because it'll be good, and then we'll have some success as a result. And although there's a mixed bag, like, there's a lot of resistance. Athletes don't necessarily want to come to relay training during the competitive season because they view it as interfering with their individual stuff. So in the second year, we took an approach of you got to treat relays as an event in their own right. So you treat your 100-meter runner. Why can't you be a 4x1 relay runner? Like it's a separate event. It's the medal is still a full medal. Like you don't get like a quarter of a medal. It's still the same medal as you get in 100 meters. But you can take six athletes to world championships, but you can only take three in the 100. So you've automatically doubled your chances of going to major championships. And it's a bit easier because you don't have to beat three Jamaicans. You only have to beat the Jamaican team, which is just one. So it was getting a bit easier that way. And it was Olympic year, and athletes sort of they were thinking, okay, well, if I want to go to the Olympics, this is a decent chance of me doing that. And then we broke the national record at the Olympics and missed the final by a very, very small margin. And that started athletes thinking, okay, there's something here now. And so we actually took a different approach where we said, here's what the next year is going to look like. This is when the training camps are. On Tuesday, the 7th of January, you're going to have to do five 60-meter sprints and do five changeovers. That's what the session is. But we're giving you 4 months notice. So there's no reason why you can't be prepared for that. If you want to sign up for this, great. Sign up for it. We'll support you at the highest level that we can. If you don't want to sign up for it, that's absolutely no problem. We don't want people coming to relay training because they feel like they have to. We want people coming to relay training because they want to be there. So you don't sign up for it, no problem. You can opt out of it. We'll consider you as an individual athlete and we'll support you accordingly. But given that most of you as individual athletes aren't making World Championship finals, aren't making World Championship semi-finals, just to make you aware that the level of support will probably be significantly lower and may not exist at all. So that process stopped a lot of the fighting around, do you want to come to relay training? It'd be really good for you to, well, you've signed up to this now. This is your job. You have to come to relay training. And it's not as being like hard work or anything like that. It's just us saying we need a minimum standard of training. And if we want to be successful, which we do, this is the minimum standard of training that we have to do. So how it generally runs is we'll have a camp in January, February, and March. They last about a week each, so that's two training sessions, and then we try and stick a competition at the end. And where possible, the competition will be two 4x1 races separated by about an hour. So the athletes are getting good exposure to relays there. Then I guess they're like released back into individual stuff where they can go into their individual races. We tried not to have camps or races around their individual stuff as much as possible. And then after our domestic season, usually is the World Relays, which we'll go and do quite well at. And then there's the European season where it's the World Championships or Olympics. So we're focused on that way. So it is a balanced act because we still want athletes to be really successful individually. So we're not trying to take that away from them. I guess we're kind of saying the two things can coexist quite nicely. And if you're good at relays, relay training in and of itself will make you a better 100-meter runner. And relays can be A, the vehicle that you make major championships, and B, the vehicle that you actually get a very decent level of support. So yeah, it's been the coaching is the small part of it. It's the cultural change, which is the major part of it, which I didn't realize coming in.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think your own kind of experience as an athlete within that setup did help you kind of tease out those, I don't want to say incentives, but just kind of communicating or relaying that message because you have that athlete perspective and you've been around it?
Yeah, I think as well, the other thing to think about is when I joined the men's 4x1 team in Britain as an athlete, they just won the Olympics. So it was
Yeah.
very clear to me that this team we can be a successful team because we already are a successful team. And then the four World Championships that I went to, we won a medal in three of them. So it's always around success. You probably can't say the same for the Australian men's 4x1 team. They've made the Olympic final a couple of times, but not for maybe 10 years. They've won a World Championship medal, but that was early 2000s. So there's been no like long-term history of success. So to an extent, a lot of the athletes just couldn't see how the relay team could be successful, and they couldn't see how it could qualify for major championships. So early on, it was about actually qualifying for major championships, getting that ball rolling. And now we're in the cycle of like we made the World Championship final this year. That makes things much easier for next year in terms of World Relays. We've automatically qualified for that. Hopefully, go to World Relays next year and we qualify for World Championships. And then this thing starts to self-perpetuate and you get into the cycle of it. But getting onto that cycle was the hard thing. But now we're on it. Hopefully that'll drive it. So yeah, it really has been around just making athletes believe that there can be success. And I guess my challenge now as a coach is we've made a World Championship final. I really need these athletes now to think that they can win a medal at major
Mm,
championships.
mm,
And that's a big ask when you think some of the teams that are winning medals, like we've got to really believe that we can beat them.
mm.
I believe as a coach is just getting the athletes to buy into it.
Mm. Well, the good thing about the relays is that a lot of teams, including yourselves, as you said, over the years, have been rewarded for just being pristinely good at the relay itself. Like you think about the winners in the last few years, and the opposite, the people that should win on paper don't win. Like Canada, Italy obviously had a good team in Tokyo, but like, it's built around Jacobs for the most part. And yeah, again, Canada have DeGrasse, but it's on the back end of that, there's a lot of 10-0 guys. So, and the direction that you have now, Gao, Lackey, and then several really good guys as well. Like, I don't see why you wouldn't think you could be the next ones to get on the podium for sure. Um, Very interesting, as you're saying there, like just kind of your approach this year compared to the other years. It sounds like you feel a little bit more comfortable taking that kind of like come if you want because the success is kind of baked in now at this point. Like it's like, we're doing it and we're doing well, and that kind of allows you to have that, I suppose, looser grip on the whole approach. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, so I think at the start of the year we had a meeting. So after the Olympics, going into 2025, we had a meeting with all the athletes, and like I had to be more direct than I usually am. And I guess the message I was sort of giving out was athletes have got agency. You've all got an opportunity to do something. Nobody's making you do things. So we need to step away from like a victim mentality of people are making me do things I don't want to do to I've got the control over whether I want to do this or not. So I can choose to be a real athlete, or I can choose to come to relay training, or I can choose not to. And that's my choice. Nobody's forcing me to do those things. Then I guess what we've worked really hard on is creating depth in our team. So, like a really interesting statistic for us is we used a completely different group of four athletes in the World Relay Final as we did in the World Championship Final. So we've had eight athletes that have run 38.3 or faster this year, which when I'd started being the relay coach in 2023, we hadn't run the 38.50 for about 10 years. So now we've got eight athletes that are well above that level. And the athletes thrive off this because they know that, like, okay, if this athlete doesn't want to come to relay training, I move up the rankings into this position here. Like it just, you have to have that depth because you're going to have injuries, you're going to have athletes that are out of form. So if you've got six, seven, or eight athletes of the level that can actually compete at a World Championship final for you, then actually that gives you the ability to like not have to convince people to come to training or engage in relays. They're there because they want to be. And if they're there because they want to be, then the atmosphere is so much better. Everybody's working together much more effectively. Everybody feels like they're being treated fairly. And yeah, I guess the results do the talking for themselves, really.
Hmm. And in regards to communicating, I suppose individually, or some of them might train together throughout the year, like is there any particular like touch points you have with them? Um, you talked about systems you put around them, like in terms of equipping them with facilities, like when they're away from the actual group sessions, like what are some of the things you think that have been really helpful with that and I think are really important to your role as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have to recognize that athletes probably don't want me to speak to them every week. Like they want to be left alone for good periods of time. So I absolutely respect that. There's periods where they're just doing their own personal training. So like October, November, December, that's completely their own time. Like I'll have chats with them if needs be. I'll check in with them as to how things are going, but um, I'm not calling them all the time to see how they're going, unless they want me to, in which case I can speak to them. Same for their coaches. Like I'll have touch points with the coaches. I'll assist them with their planning if they want that assistance, but if they don't want it, that's fine as well. And then yeah, as we get into the camp sort of period, January, February, March, it's kind of like 1 week on for relays, 4 weeks off, and then you just sort of roll through like that. And again, I'm constantly sort of like seeing the athletes and coaches at competitions, just chatting to them so they know I'm around. Um, Trying to be as helpful as possible if they've got any problems. But yeah, I'm really like I view my job. It's a bit like international football management, in as much as like I don't really develop the athletes' capabilities. I just try and help them realize it from a team perspective. And yeah, I'm not taking over from the personal coaches at all. Hopefully, I'm sort of adding to what they can do, and we all work together towards an outcome, really.
Mm. Um, on the kind of more relay coaching front, and your philosophy around that. You mentioned, and this is particularly interesting because you have got eight guys that can pretty much all execute a really good race and ultimately run a fast time. So there could be any amount of ways that you would set this up, but I'm just interested to know some of your like kind of core principles around structuring the relays, like things that you are immediately looking for in the assembly of a team, the execution of a race. Because yeah, I'm conscious that like relay coaches are listening, and it would be good to kind of pull on your knowledge because you obviously have assembled that team and got them to the level that you have now.
So my overall process has been define what happens in competition, like what do you want to happen in competition, and then create training sessions that prepare athletes to deliver those skills in competition. So like this is a bit of a going down a bit of a rabbit hole, but I'm a naturally fearful flyer. So I hate flying. And whenever I'm on a plane, like I used to be petrified of being on a plane. And then the more time I spent flying, I sort of picked up on um, like understanding why aircraft crashes happen. And it's like loads of things go wrong for a crash to happen. Like it's not a one-off thing. And then that led me into like reading more about safety principles. And there's things called like safety one or safety two. One of those is like understanding why accidents happen so you can stop them from happening. And the second thing is understanding why things are successful so you can mirror those behaviors. So if we look at relays, like why do things go wrong in a relay race? We could apply those air crash principles to relays. I think that most disqualifications in a relay happen because an athlete leaves too early or too late on the check mark. If you leave early on the check mark and you've got an aggressive check mark, then the outgoing runner is going to leave the changeover zone before they can pass the baton. Therefore you're disqualified. Or they have to slow down significantly to get the baton changed. And so that loss of speed is just going to harm the team overall. If you leave too late on the check mark, then you pass the baton too early in a compressed manner. So the changeover itself is really, really slow. So if you can have really good consistency on the check mark, then you can push the changeover to sort of 25 meters. You have a 30-meter zone in which you can change the baton. We aim to change the baton in about 25 meters. So that means the outgoing runner is running as fast as they can, really. We've got a small margin for error, and enables us to get a really, really good changeover. So if I want that consistency, then I need to train that. But importantly, I need the athletes to be consistent under stress and pressure. So I need to create training sessions which have stress and pressure and stuff to throw them off, but they can still deliver that key skill of leaving on the check mark. So basically, my whole training philosophy is trying to screw athletes over by getting them to make a mistake. And if they don't make that mistake, they've kind of done that thing. So we've done things like use an air horn right next to the athlete. We've asked the athletes, incoming athletes, to slow down as they cross over the check mark. So the athlete's kind of thrown off a little bit. I've got buttons that have got different sensory stuff, like they've got sounds on there, they've got different feelings. Some of them are heavier, some of them are lighter. I just try and create really chaotic training sessions, and I can level on pressure as well by we'll start off the week with individual changeovers. So one pair will just do a changeover. Then we finish off the week with competitive changeovers. So it's okay, you can do the skill by yourself, but what's it going to be like when we've got two or three other athletes around you? Then I'll put them in lane one or I'll put them in lane eight. So they're in different kind of situations. So they're just completely thrown off all the time. I've used simulated rain delays. I've changed the team at the last minute. Like I'm just trying to just create stress in these athletes. But if
Mm,
they can still deliver that skill robustly, then I think we can be successful. And they do like that's been basically our point of difference is they can generally deliver that skill robustly quite well. We've had a fair few disqualifications to finish off the year, but overall, we went about sort of 16 or 17 months without having any disqualification. So it was working really well. So yeah, that's kind of my principle is basically just trying to get that reaction to the check mark effective. And then second to that is just being really having the outgoing athletes be really, really aggressive on their acceleration as well. Obviously, the faster they go as they leave the box, the faster the baton's traveling. So the better they can be accelerating, the better. So all I do there is we play a game called relay golf. So athletes get more points if they leave early or late on the check mark. And the slower their 30-meter time is, the more points they get as well. And so the two athletes with the most points in the training session, they get a forfeit chosen for them by the other athletes. And like the forfeits aren't bad. Like nobody's getting fired for what happened, but the athletes don't want those things to happen
yeah.
to them. It might be like a case of just singing a song in front of people at a restaurant, for example. It's enough that you don't want to be the person that has to do the forfeit, but not enough that it's like really embarrassing or illegal or anything like that. But it creates a really good atmosphere of like it's fun, but also like there are consequences for you not delivering the skill that you need to. And
Mm,
again, if athletes aren't delivering the skill, that's not we don't want to punish them all the time. Like there's periods of time with the consequences, but also like we spend time developing it separately. We have a really good development program underneath the senior team, which gives athletes those skills in different environments. So yeah, I think they're kind of like the main things that we work towards. I just try and simplify it as much as possible. So when we went to the World Championships a couple of months ago, like we said to the athletes, or as a group, me and the athletes, we just sort of discussed what were our goals. And then we said, well, okay, we're not going to talk about the outcome goal. Like if we can deliver these three clear process goals, we leave on a check mark, if we accelerate really aggressively, and if we have a stable hand position for the athlete to change the button, then if we can do that, then we'll either be good enough or we won't. But like that's out of our control. Like, we can't control how fast other teams run, but we can control those things. So then every training session just came down to, did you believe in the check mark? Did we aggressively accelerate? Was our hand in a good position? And that's a really simple thing. Like you can see that in 3 seconds looking at a video. And then athletes aren't thinking about other stuff which is irrelevant. They just focus on these three things, executing those three things really well. And it got to the point where like training was almost boring because the athletes were just so good at doing the skill. And so I was like, well, there's nothing for me to do here. Like, okay, you've done it again and you've done it very well. Great. Next one. Okay, you've done that very well as well. It was like I almost became redundant as a coach, which is a really good place to be in,
Mm,
because it demonstrated that things were working well. And yeah, like I think the outcome was we made the final level championships, which was a good outcome for us.
mm. Yeah, no, there's loads of interesting things in that. First thing I want to ask you is when you're kind of, I suppose, initially starting the season as a squad, do you maybe have, let's say, easier guidelines for a lot of those things? For example, is it only when they get really comfortable you start getting in the pressure, where maybe then also like the zones at the start of the year aren't the same as they are at the end of the year? Like, what's the kind of progression of building towards what you inevitably see at the end is, really well managed exchanges as well as like patient and aggressive acceleration is what I see is that's kind of the end product, but how do you get there? Does it look the same throughout the season almost? Does that make
So
sense?
I kind of have, yeah, it makes sense. I kind of have like a different theme every year. So 2025, the theme was chaos. So we had athletes in the program that were kind of coming to their third year. So we have to keep training fresh for them, but also provide time and space for new athletes coming in to develop the skills. So, like I said before, like I guess the our week is arrive on Monday. Tuesday is individual changeovers, 4 or 5. Wednesday is day off and biometric review. Thursday is competitive changeovers, 3 each. Friday is biometric review, and then Saturday is race once or twice. And so for the new athletes, we can be really patient with them on Tuesday. Here's a skill you got to do. We don't have high expectations at all. We'll pair them with more experienced athletes who can talk them through it as well. And then the feedback is like, we expect them to not be able to do the skill. They need to be able to see themselves on videos so they can see how they're not doing the skill and develop that kinesthetic feel so they know, okay, here's the error that I'm making. I can see that actually external to me so that when I'm then going to do my next changeover, I can try and correct that. And then for them, we'll probably put a bit of pressure on them on the Thursday session, but not as much as the senior guys who we are. It's competitive changeovers, it's 3 pairs together, it's the air horn, it's loads of stuff like that. And then I kind of try and periodize the challenge to get progressively more challenging as we go through. So, camp one in 2025, the thing was, I said to it was planned chaos to the athletes. So I said to them, I'm not going to tell you the teams on Saturday until Saturday. So usually I'll tell them the teams on the Monday, but I'm not telling the team all week. You're not going to know until the day until we get to competition. How are you going to deal with that? How's that going to feel? And we did that. It worked well. Review with them afterwards, like how did you sort of cope with that? They coped with it really well. Didn't cause them any issues. So then the next camp, I threw in a simulated rain delay on the Thursday. So we have a simulated call room, and I said, as we're in the simulated call room, okay, it's now raining. You've got to wait an extra 15 minutes before we go out and do the training session. How are you going to deal with that? And then on the Saturday, I I'd already told them the teams early in the week, but then I just changed the teams just literally before they're about to run. So I changed the teams. Like, how are you going to deal with this? And then again, we follow up afterwards. How did that go? Were there any problems with that? Do you feel like you had the mental skills to manage this through this, so we can start to like push athletes towards the support that they need to, if we need that. And then the third camp, I was like, okay, we're going to be really structured here. I'm not going to throw any chaos at you, but we are going to like use some stuff around like air horns, etc. How are you going to deal with that type of thing? And our third camp is when we broke the national record and around 37.87. So he's kind of like I progressed into that really nicely of like messing around early on and then getting really serious. For that camp. And yeah, it worked. It worked very well. I guess the challenge for me now is like, how do I keep that fresh for the athletes next year? But yeah, the theme for this year has been just trying to create as much chaos in the athletes as possible, trying to change stuff that they don't expect. But the athletes, they really see the value of that because we've actually had rain delays in competition. We've had all these sort of things. So it's like, okay, well, rain doesn't bother me because we prepared for that on a Thursday in Brisbane, or oh, great, an athlete's been injured in warm up, but that's fine because we've simulated that. So all I'm trying to do is provide them with experience of stuff that happens, so that if it does happen in competition, they're not. It's not the first time they're experiencing that. They've been through it before.
You mentioned that like your kind of philosophy or the way you strip that back comes from your fear of flying. Was that right?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay.
yeah, that's certainly like an approach. And
Yeah.
then yeah, alongside that, as an athlete, I was disqualified in the relay at the Olympic Games. So we won the Olympics in 2004. I wasn't in the team. 2008, I wasn't in the team, and we were disqualified. So like that was a massive learning opportunity for me. And like as what I'd figured out, like I reflected on that loads after it. And I figured out that I was making the same mistake in training as I made in competition, but it wasn't being corrected. Well, the proof of it is it wasn't being corrected adequately in training because I made the same mistake in competition. But had it been corrected, or had I known that I was making that mistake to the extent I was making it, maybe I wouldn't have made it in competition. So that's driven my philosophy of you've got to be really clear on what you need to happen in training, and I've got to be really strict with the athletes of yes, you are doing this, or no, you're not, because I actually don't want to put an athlete in a situation where they're going to get disqualified at major championships. Like that's not they don't want to, I don't want them to go through that. So actually, some of that is trying to protect the athletes from being in that situation as well. Um, and yeah, yeah, that, and I guess my just been obsessed with why airplane crashes happen as a way of making myself less scared of flying. Of they've driven a lot of my philosophy.
And the chaos side of things, like I have to think that some of that comes from your background in sports science and probably some level of skill acquisition there. Like, is it related to your research studies and just like where did you pick up this idea of like learning under pressure is enhanced or remains stable, more robust through chaos?
So my experience as a relay athlete was in relays, chaos happens quite a lot. So at the 2007 European Under 23 Championships, we had two athletes get injured in warm up before the final of the 4x1. So we had to put in two new athletes into the final with like 30 minutes notice. So that's quite a lot of chaos. In the final, an athlete fell, a 6'6" German athlete fell into my lane during the changeover. So I had to jump over him whilst I was receiving the baton. So that was chaotic. And then the athlete I was giving the baton to left 2 meters early. So there's a lot of chaos in that race. And then at the 2011 World Championships, when I was racing the 4x1 in the final, I ran second leg, but then the exchange of third leg into fourth leg, the British fourth leg runner knocked over a US athlete, like he fell over. And the US athlete basically did like a flip in the air, fell into somebody else's lane. They had to run two lanes outside of them. And it ended up that Trinidad and Tobago won the bronze medal. So not Trinidad and Tobago, St. Kitts and Nevis won the bronze medal from lane one in that race. So there was just loads of chaos that was happening there. So I kind of always had that. And how I approached relays was as an athlete was kind of like you're developing through experience, you're developing a library of possible things that might happen, and you're getting solutions to them that so that when it happens in a race, if you've already been through it, then you've got a solution ready made for it, and you can respond to that way. So that was the experience part of it. And then because I'm an unbelievable nerd, in 2022, I read a book called Developing Sport Expertise, which is a textbook, but I read it for fun. But it's all about like how you can become an expert sport performer. So it leans very heavily on skill act stuff. And I was just, as I was reading that, I was like, oh, I can really see how this would apply to um, relays. Like I can see how this theory I can mold that into relays here, and this theory I can do is here. So that was the main driver. And yeah, since then I've been really interested in skill acquisition, particularly because I wouldn't view myself as just as a traditional coach. So I'm really interested in getting support from skill act people around how I can design training sessions to deliver the outcomes that I want, and it's been really useful that way. And then I reckon a third major influence on me is penalty shootouts in soccer. So the first time what Euro 96, I'm a bit older than you. So Euro 96 when England made the semi-finals of that championships and they lost on penalties to Germany. I was 9 years old. And I remember Gareth Southgate missing the penalty in the semi-final, and I remember it like just absolutely shattering me. Like I reckon I cried, and it was like the first time sport had actually broken my heart. And then being English and being an English football fan, having again in 1998, 2002, 2004, 2012, like England were always losing on penalties. And so I read a couple of books around like why do England lose on penalties? Other countries aren't so bad at it. And again, it came down to like England English players don't think that they can replicate the stress of a penalty shootout in training, so they just don't bother. Whereas other countries do bother. They create really representative situations of a penalty shootout where at the end of a training session you have to walk from the centre circle to the penalty spot, so you've got that period of isolation, seeing how they respond to that. And then other countries were using like reasonably advanced analytics to sort of understand probability of if you put the ball here, you're more likely to score, or prepare the goalkeeper of this player tends to shoot here, so take this chance. So yeah, those three things kind of like I was interested in all those three things, and then when I got the opportunity to become the relay coach, I guess I could lean on my experience, lean on my interest of stuff outside of athletics in terms of soccer, but then also just lean on, I guess, my geekiness from scientific knowledge and using some of that skill act stuff.
Mm. Yeah, and skill acquisition and sports psychology in that particular context seem to like overlap really nicely. It's a fascinating thing where I even think like it has huge application to, long jumpers and sprinters and everything else as well, because yeah, it seems like when nerves and pressure and all these things are kind of at play, like there's physiological, there's psychological responses that are going on, and it's very interesting how you can kind of manipulate conditions to create a sense of familiarity there, and thus stability. And it's something that I think when you have other expertise in your arsenal, um, whether it's like just you at a more governmental level, but or also outsourcing sports psychologists to work alongside your setup, you start to like realize these opportunities that are there to fill holes that coaches alone can't necessarily, or maybe not equipped to deal with.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I like the more time I spend in athletics as well, the more I think there's loads of expertise in terms of performance support people. And I guess the job of a coach in the future, I think, will be to lead those people towards the outcome that they all need. So the coach doesn't have to be the expert on anything. The coach just has to, I guess, like conduct the orchestra basically and bring everybody together and okay, I need what this is the outcome that I need. How can you help me on this? Okay, I'll use this bit, I won't use that bit. I need you for this period of time, I don't need you for that period of time. Like it's a different skill set to what traditional coaching probably has been. But I think as we move to like more systemized high performance sport, that's probably the way that coaching will go. And like because I'm not on a day-to-day basis, I'm not a coach. So I actually don't view myself as a coach at all. I view myself as like just wanting to take this advice from all the experts and then try and bring it together and decide what I think is useful and what isn't and use it that way.
Yeah, and you're leading me to exactly where I was going next, which is to kind of expand a bit more on your role and what the day to day looks like, because it sounds like to me you are really utilizing a lot of high performance experts in different areas to develop obviously the overall sport in Australia. But I suppose my question is like more specifically, like what does that look like? You've alluded to some already, but yeah, it seems like that is kind of your area of interest and passion is pulling on different people's knowledge and finding a very good home for how it can accelerate your mission as a sport, as a country.
Yeah, so like the sporting system in Australia is unusual. The scale of it is massive. Like Australia is obviously a huge country, so you could fly for 6 hours from where I live and still be in Australia. Like that's how big it is. Um, so we have like there's sporting institutes in each state. So each state has like there's the Queen's Academy of Sport, there's New South Wales Institute of Sport, that type of thing. And they will employ the performance support staff. They can choose to employ coaches as well if they want, and that's where athletes go to get their performance support facilities, etc. So from a performance support standpoint, what we do as the national sporting organization is, I guess, we set the overall strategy as to we think that we need more of this performance support aspect or less of this. And then I guess we set the way of working as well. So this is what performance planning looks like from our perspective. This is who should have some say into this. This is what we think is an important aspect of sports nutrition. Is everybody across this? And so we're kind of driving that type of thing. There's a quality control aspect as to making sure everybody's on the same page. And then using that to drive like research and innovation as well. So Australia's obviously got a rich history of sports science. research and university. So I guess it's just trying to harness the knowledge of people that are inside the sports system, also outside the sports system, to just think of cool and interesting ways to do new things, and that we can use to drive things forward. Yeah, like it that day to day, like I've got multiple different things, and the relay stuff as well just makes it a bit busier. But yeah, it's definitely interesting.
And I suppose since you've been in the role, like what have been maybe some of the major developments that you've seen just from, you mentioned accelerating certain inputs in the organization or at a regional level, like more nutrition involvement, like where do you feel like the direction is going in some performance departments in terms of their needs, based on your observations?
I reckon it's a really interesting question. So I think some things that we've started to implement, which like I think have been useful,
Hmm.
but that's just my opinion. I obviously would think they were useful because I implemented them. We've got like this data science dashboard, which we can use to give us ideas around this is the general performance that you need to have to finish at a certain position at major championships. This is how athletes are tracking towards that. Here's some of the factors which will play into that. This is how they're going based on their age. So we've got that kind of thing in the background, which is really useful. We've got a platform which enables us to simulate races. So we should have a good idea as to where this person will finish. We can simulate that 1,000 times. Where do they finish overall? That's the average position. In the relay, for example, I can simulate what happens if I change this athlete from this leg to that leg. What effect does that have on the overall race time? So we can experiment in the background with that, and that's like really interesting stuff. Does it move the needle or not? I think it does. Other people might not. And then we've developed something called What It Takes to Win, which like you have to do that in Australia, working with the Australian Institute of Sport. But for us, it's a document which kind of really is clear on this is what winning looks like, this is what medals look like, this is what top eight looks like, this is what top 16 looks like in terms of performance at the championships, performance before the championships, like biomechanical stuff, physiological stuff. And you can use that with like developing athletes to say, okay, let's do some tests. This is where you are now. This is where you got to get to. What's the strategy from getting from A to B? And let's track these things and see how we're going. So yeah, they've been some really important things that we've been doing. I think they've been important anyway. And then like the main thing is just trying to be as collaborative as possible. Like I think there's historically always been a tension between personal coaches and performance support personnel, whereby the personal coach might think the performance support personnel is trying to take away what they do, and the performance support personnel might think the coach doesn't think what they're doing is important or valued. And I think it's just trying to sort of like get rid of that barrier really and make everybody see that we're all trying to move in the same direction. We all want the best for the athletes, position the coach effectively as the person that needs to drive that. And the performance support personnel is the people that support that performance. And yeah, like I think that's been a really useful thing for us to do as well.
Yeah, you bring up like two very kind of nearly opposing aspects to the whole delivery, which is like kind of the objective implementation that you've made on the testing and giving people really like concrete ways to measure their performance, which is really cool. But then on the other side, which is something that I think coaches and performance practitioners bring up quite a lot, is that kind of subjective piece where people are managing relationships in order to make the service effective. And it's generally seen as quite challenging. So I'm interested to know, like, what are some of the ways you felt you've enabled to build buy-in? Because you're just not only as a someone in high performance sport with Athletics Australia, but as a relay coach who works with other coaches, that management, relationship management's always a key factor. Like, what do you think are some of the good practices that you've seen either yourself or other people do to make that kind of easier for everyone and get on the same hymn sheet essentially?
Yeah, like it's difficult. I mean, I can obviously speak from my perspective as the relay coach. Like I try not to tell people what to do. I try and explain why we might need something to happen, but then it's their choice as to whether they do that or not. And obviously, I can incentivize things that I want to happen as much as I can, and try and disincentivize things that I don't want to happen. But I have to recognize that the athlete and the personal coach are unique people in their own right, with their own competing demands or their own goals, which may be separate from mine. So yeah, that's the key thing is like I'm not going around telling people they have to do this. I'm trying to sort of like I guess, communicate with influence to try and get towards what I think is important, but fully recognizing that they might not think it's important. And that's fine. And they've got their own decisions to make, and we'll have to live by whatever the outcome of that is. So I think that's been like a pretty useful thing. And then alongside that, like I just I try and be really curious as to why somebody might do something that I don't think is what they should do, but I could be wrong, right? And so then I guess I'm thinking, oh, am I wrong? Tell me more about this. Like, what's the thought process behind this? Oh, why did you do this thing this way? Did you know this thing? And yeah, it's really enlightening because actually, like, you'll often go into a conversation thinking, why is this person doing this thing? It makes no sense to me. And then you have a conversation with them. Actually, I can understand completely why they've come up with that, and it's nowhere near as bad as I thought it would be. And they've considered these aspects of it. And yeah, so I think if you have that curiosity aspect, then you're not fighting with anybody. You're just genuinely interested as to why they're doing things.
Mm.
And then maybe you can have a bit more of an open discussion as to have they considered this aspect, and if they haven't, maybe that'll change what they do. And yeah, I think like certainly the high performance manager at Australian Athletics definitely takes a very collaborative approach as well. And so we all try and sort of move in that direction as well as to everybody working together towards the same goal.
Mm. And it's interesting because I think a lot of what you're talking about there, that kind of humility, curiosity to kind of build rapport is like fundamentals of like counseling skills 101. And I think like those non-verbal and obviously your verbal delivery is essential to bridging the gap between message heard and message said. So yeah, it's very interesting to hear you say that. But um before we wrap up, Craig, any interesting projects on the horizon? I know that I've seen online some interesting developments within and outside Australian athletics, namely some of the performance structures you're putting into place.
Yeah, well, there's obviously I think loads of stuff that we do is interesting, but we have something called the Pathways Transition Program, which is for athletes before they're categorized, which is our version of lottery funding, before they're given like the level of support that we can give them via the government. We've got our own program for up to 100 athletes, just getting them used to like utilizing performance support, them and their coaches knowing this is what a biomechanist does, this is so they can help you. And a lot of that is focused around sort of like junior athletes or 1 or 2 years outside of the under 20s as well. We used it to some good effects in the 2024 World Under 20s, which happened to be our best World Under 20s ever. And we're going into the 2026 World Under 20s now with looking for hopefully similar results. So that's something like I really think that's an important bit for the sport because it enables us to support a lot of good, promising athletes that we wouldn't have been able to before. And it just increases the chances of them coming through and being successful much more. So yeah, from a system perspective, that's probably one thing I'm really pleased about. And we've really gone hard on research and innovation in the last year or so in terms of allocating sufficient budget to that. So there's two PhDs which are embedded in the relay program. One's looking at competition day performance. So what can you do on the day of competition to improve to like maximize your performance? So looking at things like um, passive heat maintenance, priming exercises, what you should do in the warm up, stuff like that. And the second one is looking at more long-term stuff like how can you optimize readiness to perform at a major competition in athletes, particularly sprinters. So that would look at things like peaking and tapering, but also injury prevention stuff as well. So stuff like that is obviously like I think that's really interesting. We've got projects looking at understanding tactical behavior in middle distance athletes. We've got loads of aerodynamic projects in a wind tunnel, just understanding how our kit, how different items of kit might influence those sort of things, which you can see then as we move to 4x4s and you've got drafting and that kind of thing. There's loads of cool stuff you can do in that area. So yeah, like that's the stuff like that really interests me. Like I really like trying to find innovative ways to be successful. So yeah, just stuff like that. Just that's what really gets me excited.
Yeah, sounds like you're a kid in the candy shop over there, but
Yeah,
that's the dream. I mean, like many people will be listening to this and of the same mindset as you in terms of their interest and see that as a very exciting position you've got there. And it's great to see that obviously the success is starting to show there, as you said, at the medal tally there at the recent World Juniors and also the World Relays. So it's obviously a testament to what you and your team are doing. I really appreciate you coming on the last hour to chat with me about all of that and being so candid. It's been really fun listening to it as well. So thank you.
Yeah, no worries. No, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.